Before we start, please like, subscribe and hit the bell if you'd like us to keep bringing you this content. Known as the thinking man's supercar, the Audi R8 takes that Italian flair and encapsulates it in fine German engineering. It's got all-wheel drive, a reverse camera, heated seats and wait, hang on a minute. What's that? Oh yeah, it's a supercharger, because 602 horsepower just isn't enough, is it? This isn't some eBay special either. This is a VF800 supercharger that takes that 602 bhp figure to at least 805. And I've been told this one is actually closer to the 850 mark due to some airflow optimizations. Shall we see how fast this thing is on the 30s to 70 sprint? Yeah, let's. Now, we knew it was going to be fast, but with a time of 2.13 seconds, we are actually getting into hypercar territory. And just look at that graph. We pulled a near consistent 1G during almost the entire run. That might not look like much, but that's effectively the same as jumping off a building. This really does feel like a roller coaster on wheels. Now, we've already had a quick look at the inside, but look closer and you'll notice the minimalistic design of the cabin. Many supercars are laden with buttons and screens, so it is so refreshing to see a cabin designed for purpose and relaxation. Plus, unlike its twin, the Huracan, the R8 has headroom for people over 6 inches tall, making it feel like a rather roomy car inside. There's even a rather sizable space behind the seats to store all of your daily things like a laptop bag or even a small shop. Of course, there's an engine where the boot would normally be, so Audi have given you a frunk instead. This one has just 112 litres, which isn't exactly brilliant, but if you combine it with the space behind the seats, there is just enough room for a weekend away. Right, let's drive this thing, shall we? Now, first off, I hope you guys can hear me, because this car is loud. And you might be suspecting, because it's got a supercharger, it doesn't have a stock exhaust either. And you'd be right. This has pretty much got a straight through system on it, apart from a sports cat, wink wink. And the other thing you notice is, apart from that noise, this is a really easy car to drive. The steering feels like pretty much any other Audi. The only difference is it's quite a bit more direct, so when you turn the wheel, the car does turn quite a lot faster. But the brakes, these are the optional carbon ceramics, and some journalists said they're grabby. But I think because these have been bedded in quite a bit, they feel just like normal brakes. Throttle pedal is responsive, but not too sharp. And the dual clutch gearbox does a really good job of just moving through slow traffic. It's a hell of a lot better than that automated manual that was in the old R8s. But driving around town, I mean, it's as easy as a Golf. And I guess that's the point with a car like this. It is supposed to be easy. If anything, for me, it's actually easier. Because the steering's more direct, you have to put even less effort in to just steering the car around a corner. And the suspension, we're sitting in comfort mode now, and this MagRide system does a wonderful job of just ironing out all the bumps. Even going over bigger speed bumps, you can feel there's actually quite a lot of travel in the suspension. And you know those singular speed bumps, usually there's like 3 in a row. This will actually go over them without scraping. Then in terms of parking, well, I mean, visibility really isn't that bad. Of course, it's not great at the back, but then again, you get a reverse camera, so it doesn't really matter. You've got lines telling you where you're going to go. Turning circle is fairly good as well. And remember, this is actually quite a small car. It is wide, but it's not that long. Again, it's not much bigger than a Golf. And there is absolutely zero jerkiness from this gearbox. Now, the main big difference between this and a normal R8 is that supercharger. And even when you're going slow, you can hear it whirring in the background. It's just letting you know that there is a hell of a lot of power to be had. Right, let's reset the trip computer and see what MPG we can get out of this. This has got a 73 litre fuel tank, but when you're getting 20 miles per gallon, you're not going to get very far even with that much fuel. Right, let's have a taste of this Audi R8 handling. Got the drive select mode here. I'll put it into dynamic. You can hear the exhaust wake up just a bit. Pops and bangs from the exhaust. Steering sharpens up even more. Throttle response is increased. And just a tiny bit of gas. And this car absolutely flies. That was only an 1/8 throttle. And you can see, even though this car's running a lot more power, the gearbox deals with it very, very well. For now though, we're going to see what this car's like on the motorway, because this is the thinking man's supercar after all. Well, so the first thing you notice is actually the lack of road and wind noise in this car. If we didn't have a sports exhaust system, this is actually as quiet as something like an Audi A5 inside. It's unbelievable how easy a supercar like this is to drive. Then the seats, they've got plenty of adjustment. You can adjust the lower bolsters as well as the upper bolsters. And it just means if you're on the motorway, you can slacken off the seat a bit and just relax. The only downside for me so far is that you're sitting at about 3,000 RPM at 70 miles an hour. And I understand that this is a supercar, but having a slightly longer gear would be nice. And Audi actually did change that in their later cars, so they now sit at a lower RPM on the motorway. But back to the seats, as their position is actually quite high. I'm in the lowest setting, and I still feel quite high up in this car. I'm not quite cocooned enough for me. And it also means that my arms don't quite reach the armrests in this car. Would be nice to just get a little bit lower in this. Then we get to interior quality, and Audi is always good at this. But I have to say, they have really stepped up the game for the R8. And you kind of expect that, really. It is a very expensive car, but you've got their finest possible leather everywhere in the cabin. Then the actual look of the interior is just second to none for me. Having one central screen and having everything else just be this really clean, minimalistic design makes it a really relaxing car to drive in. The only other screens you have are these little dials down here, which control your temperature and where the airflow is going. And this car is now 6 years old, and it still looks brand spanking new. And in terms of visibility, it's actually really good on the motorway. Because you've got these really long coupe-style doors, you can see in your blind spot with absolute ease. And the view out the back on the motorway is actually not that bad. And in terms of dynamics, the steering stays absolutely dead straight on the motorway. And the suspension, I can't believe how supple this car feels. I don't know how they've done it, but the car stays absolutely dead flat. But you don't feel any big or small bumps. It never seems to get unsettled. And Audi say this is the fastest reacting suspension they've ever made. And I believe the way it works is that there's a magnetic fluid in the dampers, and then there's like an electronic control unit that either charges them or doesn't charge them, and it basically firms them up or slackens them off. I could be totally wrong on that, so if I am, please let me know in the comments below. Then in terms of specification, this is a fully spec'd, or it certainly was at the time, Audi R8 V10 Plus. It's got literally everything you can possibly get. But the three things I would get, if I could get them, would be the Bang & Olufsen sound system, because of course you need good audio. You've already got a good engine, why not have a good sound system as well? And in this car, the B&O system certainly doesn't fall short. Then the next thing would have to be heated seats. I don't know if these actually come as standard. Knowing Audi, they probably don't, but it's certainly something worth having, because these are leather seats, they are really cold in winter, and it's one of those things you kind of just expect to have in a supercar. Then the last thing would be this carbon fibre interior pack. It really adds a level of quality into the cabin. Well, unsurprisingly, this isn't as efficient as a Golf. We managed 20.3 mpg, so on a long run you'd probably get 21, 22 if you drove the car very slowly. And apparently this car does actually have cylinder deactivation, so if you are driving on the motorway it will only use 5 cylinders. But I don't really see that making much of a difference here, to be honest. Anyway, let's get on to what we're all here for and do some proper driving. I'm not going to turn the traction control off, but I can put it in dynamic still, and that will allow the car to move around just a little bit. You see, even in 4th gear, at only 4,000 RPM, this thing accelerates like an E63S. It's got a bit of tunnel noise. That V10 certainly never gets old. Watch how fast this thing gets up to 70 and you're done. It is that fast, this car. And in terms of handling, it's not even comparable to any saloon car. It stays so much flatter in the corners. And the one thing you notice is just how rear-wheel drive biased this Audi is. It's a very odd feeling to get in a car with this badge and be going sideways at the slightest touch of the throttle. One thing I forgot to mention is that, of course, you can change the virtual cockpit. This is the view you'd have it in most of the time, but because I need to see the speedo in this car, I have to keep it in this view. Anyway, what's it like on a tighter, bumpier British B-road? We're in dynamic. Suspension's obviously stiff. Still works pretty well though. And there's not a lot of leeway. You end up going the speed limit by literally just touching the throttle. I literally cannot put my foot down in this car on a B road. Oh no, there we go. There was a little bit of full throttle. And whilst you may not be able to extrapolate the handling prowess of this Lamborghini chassis, you can listen to the engine. And that's kind of why you buy this car. Of course, you could buy a Porsche Turbo S. You know, you could make it as fast as this, probably quicker. But you're never going to get that noise out of that car. This just feels special to be in, but it's still got that Audi design. It is pretty much the best of both worlds. It's quiet on the motorway, as long as you keep the exhaust standard. Yet it's got that Italian flair in it as well. And in my mind, if you're spending over £100,000, you've got to get one of these Superchargers. It totally changes the game for this car. I mean, you're almost in Bugatti Veyron territory when it comes to acceleration. Jesus Christ, man. This car is stupid. Why do you need it to be this fast? Oh, you can feel your eyes move back in your skull. And look how fast those gear changes are. Unbelievably quick. Well, that's it. The last unfiltered, unelectrified Audi R8. And what a visceral, emotional, and frankly just downright special experience. I'm really going to miss cars like these. Cars built with passion as well as purpose. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review, because I certainly did. So give us a like, and why not subscribe if you haven't already. You can see more content like this, as well as everything we have for sale. My name's Tom, and you've been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.